How's it going, Makis? Taki here, and I'm back with another boss guide. Today I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know to start farming Araxxor kills.
I've got you here when the sun is burning red. We'll shine like diamonds when our old lives are dead. Leave them behind.
Welcome back. This is a boss guide that I've been meaning to make for the last few months, so without further ado, let's get into it. If you're new to my videos, you can find timestamps for everything that I'll talk about in the description box below. This is a larger video than I usually make and it's packed full with information, so feel free to skip around to the sections that pertain to you. First up, let's talk about some recommendations. These are the stat recommendations that I would advise you to have before you start trying to kill the boss. It is possible to get kills with lower stats than what I'm recommending, but if you're not good at PvM, you're going to find things significantly more difficult than it would be if you just went out and got these levels and tried again. I've tried to keep this realistic, but the only thing that I think would be non-negotiable for a new person to this boss would be 85 combat stats. There are a few things that you should unlock before attempting to kill this boss. In no particular order, we have Tier 2 Nope 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 perk from player-owned farms which boosts damage on spiders, Enhance Excalibur which you can use for healing, the World Wakes quest for DPS ultimates, the Seer's Elite task if you're using dual range, the Ring of Vigor to save adrenaline, Ghost Ahoy for a teleport near the boss, Port Superior Scrimshaws for best in slot damage and healing, and the Devotion ability. Now let's go over some gear setups. The following is an example inventory that you can use when you're first starting to get your kills. You should use overloads or grand potions if you don't have the levels for overloads. You should bring 2 to 5 brews, 2 super stores, a Ring of Vigor and a Luck of the Dwarves switch, a super prayer renewal potion, an adrenaline or a replenishment potion, a pheromone if you aren't going to be using instances to force a style of Araxxor that is weak against your combat style, an elite Excalibur, a bladed dive switch, and a shield. Fill the rest of your familiar with food. First up, we have range, and this is going to be the combat style that I would advise you to use if you're just starting to learn this boss. You should have a minimum of full armadillo, a cape or an accumulator, a reaper necklace, an asylum surgeon's ring, and dual glavins or better. In the pocket slot, you can have a charged godbook or a scrimshaw of cruelty. You will also need at least an armadillo buckler. You can find upgrade paths for everything that I've mentioned here on the right side of the screen. Although it is not required, it is useful to have the Venom Blood perk on your armor. For mage, you should have full subjugation, tier 85 weapons or better, a cape, a reaper necklace, an ASR, and a scrimshaw of elements or a charged godbook. You can also bring a rune pouch if you want to save inventory space, but this isn't required. Finally, you should have a ward of subjugation or better. You can find the upgrade paths to the right, and you can feel free to use dual mage or two-handed mage after you have learned the basics of this boss. For melee, you will need full bandos, a dragon rider lance, a cape, a reaper necklace, an ASR, and a charged godbook or a scrimshaw vampirism. You can find the upgrade path for your gear to the right. Now let's talk about the Enrage mechanic of this boss. This boss has a base Enrage of 0 to 300%. Enrage boosts Araxxor and Araxxi's damage to the player. The boss gains rage through various actions: killing adds, filling the acid level, luring spiders, HP thresholds of 50k and 25k, and killing the boss. The boss gaining rage is slightly inconsequential, but you will notice a ramp up in difficulty after you do your first few kills each day. The base enrage of the boss resets at 0 game time. Now let's cover the mechanics of the boss. In Phase 1, Araxxor has 3 special attacks: the Cocoon, which encases the player, the Web Shield, which heals the boss and reflects damage back to the player, and the Cleave, which pulls the player into the boss before hitting them. You will also need to start burning the web of the path that you want to travel down at the start of Phase 1. Araxxor's special attacks are all dealt with in a similar manner. To counter the Cocoon, simply use Freedom or Anticipation after the 3rd auto attack. If the buff is on your bar when you are encased, you just need to spam click a few times to free yourself. If you fail to do this correctly, you will be encased for a longer time and take significantly more damage. There are 2 ways to handle the web shield. The first way is just to click off the boss with auto retaliate off and wait for the web to finish healing. The better way, but by no means necessary on your first kill, is to start a snipe when the shield closes over the boss and then immediately switch to a shield and res the reflect. Cleave is also easy to deal with, and if you've timed your freedom or anticipation correctly, nothing will happen to you as long as you are out of melee range. If you didn't use Freedom or Anticipation correctly, all you need to do is walk back out of melee range or use Escape or Surge. Once the boss's health is around 5,000 or lower and the web is no longer blocking the path, you can walk past the point where the web used to be to progress to the next phase. Now let's talk about the mechanics for Phase 2, Path 1. Burn Spawn is actually a mechanic that you will see on all paths, but I put it here because we're going to use it to deal with the second mechanic, which is more spiders. Burn Spawn is really easy to deal with. After Araxxor spawns a pile of eggs, all you need to do is make your way over to them and stand on them until you are hit with an attack that will burn them. If there are spiders up when a burn spawn happens, you should try to kite the spiders over to the egg so that they are killed at the same time. More spiders is probably going to be the reason why you hate doing this path when you are first learning the boss. Araxxor will spawn a total of 20 spiders throughout this phase. The third, second, and first spiders from spawns 1 through 3 are special spiders. These will either be mirrorback spiders, which reflect all damage done to the boss back to the player, or pulsating spiders, which heal the boss. The best way to deal with this mechanic when you are first learning the boss is to use AoE abilities and kite melee spiders to the eggs to help kill them. Let's take a closer look at this mechanic. When you see the spiders run away from Araxxor, that is when the spawn is about to start. You can continue doing damage to the boss, but when you are first learning, you should get off the boss and start cleaning up the ads. The third spider to spawn will be the special spider. On low enrages, or if you are using decent gear, you should leave the melee spiders following you so that way you can lead them over to the burn spawn to kill them. On the second set of spawns, the second spider to spawn will be the special spider. These spiders can spawn in front of or behind the boss. You should use AoE abilities to take out the mage and range spiders. On the third spawn, the first spider to spawn will be the special spawn, so it's important to get off the boss so that way you don't end up reflecting damage onto yourself. The last set of spiders are normal spiders, so you can start walking down the path, and if the boss is around 5000 HP, you can walk all the way down the path to get to Phase 3. If the boss still has a decent amount of HP, you can start working away at the HP all the way down here before crossing this point to phase the boss. Any spiders that are not killed or spawned will carry over into Phases 3 and 4. Path 2 is the easiest path to take when you are just learning the boss. There are only two unique mechanics on this phase. The first are the insta-kill spiders that will kill you if you touch them, and the second mechanic is the acid ramp and the acid pool that you need to use to advance to Phase 3. Throughout this phase, you will see Araxxor throw a pile of acid on the ground. At this time, you have a few seconds to move away from that spot before an insta-kill spider will spawn. It's important that you avoid this spider because it can easily kill you. You can use Surge, Escape, or Cade to avoid death. The acid ramp is the second mechanic of this fight. To progress to Phase 3, you need to hold the boss inside the acid pool until the acid bar fills to a little bit above 50%. When you see the bar fill up to this point, walk the boss up the ramp and stand one square from the top. This is what that looks like in practice. Here I am on the edge of the pit, holding the boss in the middle, and the acidity at the top is filling up. Once the acidity reaches around 50%, I'm going to wait until the next special attack is used, and then I'm going to start walking the boss to the top. You will know when you've walked the boss far enough when the path starts to corrode. Now that you're at the top of the path, you're going to need to obey all of the boss mechanics. If you get pulled in for a cleave, you're going to step back one square to avoid the damage. If the boss's HP is really low at this point, you can switch over to your shield and start cycling your defensive abilities. Once the platform degrades, it's time to advance on to Phase 3. On Path 3, we have two mechanics to deal with. These are Charge and Darkness. To do this path effectively, you are going to want to be comfortable with using Surge and/or Bladed Dive. When you go into this phase, it's a good idea to have more than 50% adrenaline. This will allow you to use defensive abilities to limit the damage you take. Every time the path goes dark, you need to search for the path of light and run to it. The longer you stay out of the light, the more damage you will take. Throughout this phase, you will also be hit with range and magic hits from the ceiling. To deal with this, either res to heal some HP or switch your prayer. You will also need to handle the burn spawn mechanic. If you have the mobile perk on your gear, you should be able to surge to every light spot. At one point in the fight, Araxxor will start charging toward you and you will need to press the correct button to dodge the hit. You need to do this correctly 2 times to advance the phase. For this animation, press left. For this animation, press right. For this animation, press up. And for this animation, press down. Failing this mechanic will cause you to take a small amount of damage, and you'll have to do the phase for a longer period of time. During Phase 3, Araxxor gains the abilities of the path that you took and the other path that's open. That means spiders from Path 1, insta-kill spiders and highly acidic spiders from Path 2, and the darkness from Path 3. Unlike the previous phases, Araxxor can chain abilities back to back during Phase 3. Depending on the path you took, you can see Araxxor's available mechanics at the top of your bar. There's nothing difficult to deal with during Phase 3, so as long as you know all of the information from Paths 1, 2, and 3, this should be a breeze for you. During this phase, you will see that there are green spiders around the room. You can click on these and lure them into Araxxor to make Phase 4 a little bit easier for yourself. Once you've finished Phase 3, Phase 4 will start. Araxxor can spawn spiders, cleave, web shield, and cocoon. Araxxor will stop using special attacks at 50,000 life points and will start to attack you faster. Araxxor will enrage at 25,000 life points and spawn a dark core that will follow you around the room while taking 50% of your adrenaline. The core will bounce around the room before landing on you for high damage. While killing Araxxor in Phase 4, it is important that you correctly flick your prayers to avoid taking large hits. Your first 3 kills will have a different animation than this one that you cannot skip. You should do some sort of ability to stall your adrenaline and drop out of combat. This will allow you to eat food without losing adrenaline. Right before the boss spawns, you're going to want to do something like a freedom or an anticipation, and then use devotion before the boss attacks you. You'll be able to do all of these things without losing any adrenaline. I personally like to orient my camera sideways like you can see on screen right now so that way I can see the attacks before they are about to hit me. You want to get in the habit of switching your prayer at the last possible second so that way you can have the most uptime on the prayer before having to switch it again. There are 4 ways that you can handle the Enrage mechanic at 25,000 life points. Number 1 is you can eat a Great Gunkin, use an Enhanced Excalibur, and Onslaught right before 25,000 life points. Here are a few examples of what that looks like. Right now I'm at 100% adrenaline and I'm getting ready to use an Onslaught. I'm going to use an Onslaught and then use my Excalibur and change my prayers accordingly. The order on this is a little bit messed up, but you can see that this is very easy to phase the boss. This is something that I did for a lot of my first kills, but I started to favor other methods because I felt that this was too cheesy, but it is a way to get kills if you feel comfortable with using Onslaught. This Onslaught is a little bit different. I'm doing it at 30,000 life points, and my order of Excalibur is still a little bit wonky, but you can see that you'll have no problem with phasing the boss as long as you can switch your prayers correctly. It's really important to keybind food at the end of this because the last hit can register and kill you. And here's one more example of an Onslaught cancelled early. When the Onslaught cancels, all you have to do is eat some food and then use a basic ability to finish off the rest of the HP. Another way that you can handle this is to use Sunshine, Death Swiftness, or Berserk at 40,000 life points and burn the rest of the boss. Here's one example of this. This Sunshine was popped a little bit too early, and the core is going to end up touching me, but if you do this correctly, the core should never get to the point where it will hit you, and it would never get to the point where it will hit you 2 times as long as your DPS is fast enough. Here's another example. I popped the Sunshine around 35,000 life points, and the boss dies the moment that the core hits me. There may be some times where you're not set up to use an ultimate ability, so the next best thing you can use are your high damage threshold. This is an example of just going through some melee abilities instead of using Berserk. Here's an example of range. Note that the core does touch me and I move more than you need to. It's only important that you move 1 square. You don't need to run around the room. The core will touch you once and then it will bounce around several more times before it will touch you again. Just burn the boss before it has a chance to do it twice. The last way that you can do this is just to shield camp and do defensives. I really don't recommend that you do this unless you're completely out of supplies and you'll die otherwise. Now this isn't a good example by any stretch of the imagination, but it does show the abilities that you're going to need to use. You can use things like Resonance to get a really good heal here at the end. You can use Devotion to limit any damage that you take as long as your prayer is switched correctly, and you're going to want to use things like Debilitate and Reflect. You can see here that I do end up getting the kill, but it's only because I signed at the end. There shouldn't be too many times where you're in a situation like this. That's it for the main part of this guide. There's a bonus section of kill videos if you need more guidance. If this helped you at all, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you have any questions or you need more help, drop me a message below and I'd be glad to help you out any way I can. Until next time, Taki out.